Hello, welcome to the Gregory C. This is December 25th, 2019. Let's talk about the truth drops in the 1977 movie Capircorn 1. Here's the shot of the movie box. This movie came out in 1977, 1978. This was a movie about a fake mission to Mars. And this presentation presupposes some knowledge. Understands that you've watched the movie, so if you haven't watched the movie, there may be some spoilers in here, so maybe you go to watch the movie first. It's available on YouTube. It also presupposes some knowledge about the occult, and it's my understanding that truth is revealed through movies, that the conspirators of this world are inclined to reveal truth about their crimes through movies, such that they are relieved of the karmic responsibility of their actions, that someday they can say, well, we told you and you didn't do anything about it. So this is my understanding. You may not agree with that, but that's the position I'm coming from here. So I've jotted down around 20 or so truths which I think are revealed in this movie. This is a picture here, a still from the movie, where they're showing the set of the lunar lander on Mars, and then some of the stage lighting and the astronauts used, and the directors. Again, this is a still from the movie Capircorn 1. The movie features O.J. Simpson and some other well-known actors. It's a good movie. It's very entertaining. It's well made. There's a really good chase scene at the end. I encourage you to watch it and look at it with a critical eye. So let's go through these things. Firstly, I've got two quotes for you. The first is from Henri Armiel, which is, "Truth is not only violated by falsehood, it may be outraged by silence." And the second, "Ignorance is condemnation without investigation." So the things that I reveal here, before you tell me that I'm wrong and I'm a crazy conspiracy theorist, I would encourage you to look into these things for yourself. So let's get started. One thing that I think the movie Capircorn 1 reveals is that the astronauts who participated in these events, for example, Apollo 11, I don't believe Apollo 11 landed on the moon. What I think happened was the space shuttle was launched, the shuttle orbited the Earth, and then came down and landed, and they filmed the scenes which were supposedly on the moon, on Earth. So the first truth drop, I think, is that the astronauts did not have prior knowledge of the fakery. So we can look at, this is a photo from the Apollo 11 press conference after Buzz Aldrin, Neil Armstrong, and Michael Collins landed, and they gave a press conference. It was about an hour and 15 minutes. This entire press conference is available on Bart Sabrell's YouTube channel. I encourage you to go watch the whole press conference and look at it with a critical eye, and look at their body language, and look at the entire lack of excitement that they exhibit. They discussed, there was a question asked about seeing stars from the moon, and Neil Armstrong says he didn't remember seeing any stars. And then Michael Collins chimes in, who was, so Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong went down on the LEM from the orbiter and landed on the surface of the moon, supposedly. And Michael Collins stayed in the orbiter. And then Michael Collins answers the question and says, "I don't remember seeing any." After which Neil Armstrong throws him an elbow. It was kind of subtle, but he elbows him as to indicate, like, hey man, you weren't supposed to answer that question because you weren't supposed to be on the surface of the moon. It's a very revealing scene in this interview. But just look at the faces of these guys. These look like three men who were very excited. They're national heroes. They landed on the moon. They came back to tell their story. I mean, you would be the most excited human being on Earth if you returned from the moon landing. I mean, they're reading their scripts. They have dour faces. They're looking down. They clearly don't exhibit any excitement in this photograph. The second one I have is that the astronauts were forced to perpetrate this conspiracy at the threat of violence to their family. And this is something I'm assuming. I'm not them. I don't know what was said, but In the movie Capricorn 1, that is what happens. The astronauts are removed from the space shuttle prior to launch, and they were asked to participate in this fakery. They really were not happy about it, and their families were threatened that they would be all killed. They said, the director in the movie Capricorn 1 told the astronauts, well, your families are on this plane, and there's a device on the plane, and we could take them out. And I think that's something that the conspirators would, in fact, do. So I think that's another truth drop. Neil Armstrong only gave one, aside from this press conference, he only gave one interview in 25 years. He was confronted by Bart Sibrel multiple times, and you can look into these things. But if you went on the moon and you remain silent for 25 years to the public, it just seems curious. Another thing that Capricorn 1 reveals is that there was really crappy technology used by the government. In Capricorn 1, they talk about really shoddy, I think it was backup safety equipment. They said they bought to save money, and that so that the company that made it could make money. And if you look at NASA programs as a conspiracy to extract money from the American public, you could certainly see that if it was a conspiracy and no one landed on the moon, that the millions and millions and maybe billions of dollars that were used to create these programs, and in fact they just built models on the Earth and potentially filmed these things on the Earth, could be seen as a way for certain people to get very rich. Another thing that I think is a parallel to exactly what happened at Apollo 11 is that in the movie Capricorn 1, the president did not attend the launch. So you can assume that the president knew that the launch was going to be a conspiracy and he didn't want to go to the launch. It's said in the movie Capricorn 1 that the president was fearful and he didn't want to be there when it happened. And in fact, in real life, JFK was the president who announced that we were going to the moon. And you know what happened to him? His vice president, LBJ, became president. And during LBJ's 3-year tenure, you can see LBJ as a figure who was part of the conspiracy, as evidenced by his involvement in the USS Liberty. That's something else I'd encourage you to look into. But basically, during the 7-day war between Israel and Egypt, the USS Liberty was attacked, and the USS Liberty was able to get a distress signal out, and the military went to rescue them, and LBJ called off the rescue. And in fact, the ship was sitting for over 16 hours, listing in the ocean, I think with the expectation that it would sink before they were rescued. It did not sink. Also, this was when the United States got into the Vietnam War. There was the Gulf of Tonkin false flag incident. Again, this was when LBJ was president. And after 3 years, LBJ left office and President Nixon came in. So Nixon was the president during the Apollo 11 launch, and he was the U.S. president who did not attend the launch. And the vice president at the time, I forget who Nixon's vice president was, but the vice president attended the Apollo 11 launch. So, again, in Capricorn 1, the president actor in the movie did not attend, and the vice president did attend, and the vice president in the movie did not know that they were planning on faking this Mars launch. So I think that's something that's parallel to what actually happened during the Apollo 11 launch, and again, I think that's another truth drop. Another thing this movie reveals is that slow motion technology is used to simulate low gravity on, the moon or on Mars. In this movie, on Mars, so they're filming in a studio. When the astronaut is jumping off the ladder onto the surface of Mars or onto the surface of the set on Earth, there's a director in NASA who gives the command to use slow motion. And if you look into the moon footage of astronauts running and jumping on the moon, They look like they were used in slow motion. There's a lot of people who've gone back. You can look into this on YouTube and sped up the footage, and it looks like they're just running in normal time on Earth. So again, I think that's another truth drop. Another one, this is pretty basic. There may be some overlap in some of these, but I think one of the truth drops is that the fakery was shot in a movie studio on Earth. There's a lot of speculation that Stanley Kubrick may have been the director of the Apollo 11 moon landings, and I think maybe the Apollo 12. I won't go into that a lot. You can do your own research, but certainly this scene here from The Shining, this is one of Stanley Kubrick's movies. You see the hexagon, which could be seen as the launching pad, and Danny, the character in the movie, is wearing an Apollo 11 sweatshirt. There's a lot of hidden meaning that I think Stanley Kubrick hid in that movie. That's something that's very interesting to research, and a lot of people have done videos and articles on this, so you can look into that. The next one I have is that someone in NASA wants the truth to be released, that there are people that are working in the NASA organization who know the truth about the faked moon landings, and they want to get the information out to the public, but they can't really come out publicly and say it for fear of their jobs or threats themselves or their family. There's a character in the movie Capircorn 1 who's one of the console workers who runs some diagnostics and finds some unusual data and goes to the head of the program and says, hey, I found this unusual data, and he's basically silenced. They say, no, your console's messed up, and then they fix the console, and the guy runs his diagnostics again and says, hey, I'm still getting this weird data. And in the movie Capircorn 1, this person, the NASA technician, is at a bar shooting pool with his friend. His friend goes to take a phone call and comes back, and his friend's gone. And his friend is a reporter. His friend, the reporter, goes to his apartment where he spent time with this gentleman and finds that there's someone else living there. She says she's been living there for over a year. So again, you can read into this and try and discern the lengths that people who like to hide the truth will go. They disappeared in the movie Capircorn 1. They disappeared this NASA technician. The assumption is that this man was killed because he was onto something. And also, as previously mentioned, Bart Sibrel, the filmmaker who made the movies, the documentaries A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon and Astronauts Gone Wild. I encourage you to go watch those. He tells the story of requesting the original launch footage for a documentary he was doing on Apollo 11, and he did numerous Freedom of Information Act requests to NASA, and he kept getting the same footage from the launch, which had a broken countdown sequence, and he was requesting the full countdown sequence. And one day he was sent a reel of footage with a label on it that this footage is not to be released to the public, and some of this footage is included in his documentary A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon. But I think these are parallel. The idea that someone in NASA, maybe a technician or someone working there, caught on to the truth and wants to get the truth out, I think that goes really parallel to what actually happened with the Apollo 11. I've got so again, it's possible that these dissident NASA employees have been killed or would be. I don't have evidence for that. That's just another truth drop. And also, the fact that this NASA technician in Capircorn 1 completely disappears and has his life erased could be understood as that the puppet masters of this world have the power to make you disappear and can erase your life. They can erase your job history, your social security number, your presence here on the planet. And so that's could be seen as them showing the amount of power that they actually have through what happens to this character in the movie. Another one is that the space astronauts were removed from the shuttle just prior to launch. And the BBC did a documentary, this James Burke documentary, and in this, I'll play a short clip from this. You can see that astronauts are going down a slide from the Saturn V rocket, and the journalist, James Burke, you see here in just a moment, comes out into an explosion-proof room underground from this slide, and you can watch this video on YouTube. I'll put the links in the description. But he explains that if there was something going wrong with the launch, the astronauts could slide down this chute and come out into this safe room underground, which would be protected from any kind of explosion. So, you can read into this on the other side and see that it could be used to show to the public that, hey, we loaded into the launch vehicle, and the astronauts could escape underground without even you knowing that they left. This is done a little bit differently in the movie Capircorn 1, but it's the same idea. Another truth drop that I think Capircorn 1 reveals is that there is the hidden hand, the shadow government, the deep state, whatever you want to call it, but that they control the government, the police, the media, the military. All these things are controlled by dark forces, and you see this evidence in Capircorn 1. The police come to the journalist in Capircorn 1 is trying to figure out what really happened, and he's sitting in his apartment, and the police come and they arrest him. They plant drugs in his apartment and say, oh, well, look, you have some cocaine here, and they take him to jail. That discredits him. Also, you have the chase scene between the military and one of the escaped astronauts in the movie Capircorn 1. You can understand that there are operatives in the military. Again, I think these are reveals, truth reveals that the military is involved, the police is involved, the media is involved, or at least they're being used as tools wittingly or unwittingly. So, also we have the Smith-Mundt Act, which was government legislation that allows the United States public to be propagandized. Previously, propaganda was illegal in the United States. We're supposed to have truth in media, but the Smith-Mundt Act legalized propaganda. So, again, you can see how these things can act. And again, in the movie Capircorn 1, the police officers plant drugs on this reporter who's looking for the truth about what really happened on this Mars mission. And I think that's another truth drop. If you're a threat to the established order, then you can be taken out and discredited by corrupt police officers. I think that's another truth drop. Another one, in the movie Capircorn 1, at the end, there's a funeral for the 3 astronauts who died upon re-entry, when in fact they never left Earth, and their funerals were faked. And now it doesn't mean the media knows that the funerals were faked, but it does mean that the perpetrators of the conspiracy would fake a funeral. And in the movie, this was before all 3 astronauts were killed. I mean, again, this is presupposing you've seen the movie. But what I have here, this is from 1962. This is from a document on Operation Northwoods, which was the United States using covert means, false flag attacks, to get Cuba involved. This is during the Cuban Missile Crisis. And so in this document, under bullet A here, it says incidents to establish a credible attack. So the United States was going to attack a ship in Cuba's harbor. Again, there's all these points, 1 through 11. Start rumors, land funded Cubans and over the fence, blah, blah, blah. So they were going to sink a ship and then say, look, Cuba sank our ship. They can tell the United States public, look what Cuba did to the United States vessel, and then can use this to propagandize the American people into getting public support for an operation against Cuba. But if you look at number 11 here, under bullet A, number 11, this says, sink ship near harbor entrance, conduct funerals for mock victims, maybe lieu of 10. So in this 1962, now unclassified document, they outline a strategy in which fake funerals are to be used to perpetrate this false flag. So I'm just using this to support the argument that fake funerals are used to lend credence to false flag events. This next one, this is a pretty basic one. Hollywood is used to fake reality and make propaganda. I think that's pretty obvious, but that's what's done here in the movie. There's a movie set used to create something fake, create this fake Mars mission, or in the case of Apollo 11, the fake mission there. And Another thing that Capricorn 1 reveals is that there's really only a small number of people who actually know the trick of the fakery, who know the truth about the false flag or the fake event. And I think this strongly parallels what happens in reality. There are interviews with the Apollo 11 technicians who say that they didn't or couldn't tell the difference between a practice drill and the actual launch. That's one of the things that people who believe in the Apollo mission say, hey, how could everyone be involved in this? How could they all keep it secret? You have all these technicians, all the workers on this, all the people in the space program, and well, they didn't know. And this is something that the movie reveals, is that no one working at those terminals who are just looking at data readouts and looking at their screen there in their consoles at NASA, that they didn't know that they were fake. And so again, this is something that the movie portrays, and I think this is a real truth drop, which shows real parallels with what happened on the Apollo 11 and subsequent missions. So another one, I think, is that astronauts reveal the truth to the public in some code language. And this is exhibited in the movie Capircorn 1 by, there's a scene when the Mars astronauts are talking to their wives on Earth. And it's kind of a poorly made scene because it's a bit of it doesn't really play with the story of the movie, because the story is that the astronauts on Mars, there's a 20-minute tape delay if they were to have communication with them, so that they pre-recorded this message. But in the movie, they're talking at the wives back and forth, and there's no delay. So it's a bit of doesn't go well with the narrative of the movie. But again, if you think about the speech that Neil Armstrong gave to a graduating class of astronauts 25 years after the launch, he makes a cryptic statement, and he says to them that, and I encourage you to look this up, that they will have successful careers if they can remove one of truth's hidden layers. Now, those are the words of Neil Armstrong after remaining silent for 25 years. So you can go look into that speech and hear what he said, and I think you'll find that statement to be true. But again, this is Neil Armstrong potentially revealing his hand about participating in the fake moon missions. And in that scene, Capircorn 1, the astronaut tells his wife, when I get back, I'm going to take our son back to Yosemite. And the reporter in the movie Capircorn 1 is interviewing this woman and finds out that they never went to Yosemite. And he finds out that, this is part of the movie, but they went to Flat Rock. And he thinks, the reporter in Capircorn 1 thinks that this was the astronaut trying to tell his wife in code to reveal something to her. So I think that parallels with the speech that Neil Armstrong gave. The truth drop is that the shuttle was launched without the astronauts. So there's speculation that the Challenger explosion has been used to regenerate public interest in the space program. There are people who say, I can't prove this to you, but during Apollo 12, this is the second moon mission, people were calling the television channel saying, hey, you guys are interrupting my I Love Lucy program to show this space launch. And it's something that I think happened. This was testified by many people. And so, Apollo 11, the first time the astronauts went to the moon, okay, the next time the public's like, all right, we've already seen it, I want to watch my television program. And so they saw this as an interruption. And afterwards, we had the Challenger explosion, which I've got something here for you. There was this picture is available on the web. I can't attest to its authenticity, but there are people who think that they have discovered these Challenger astronauts, 30, 40 years after the Challenger explosion. Again, the photographs could be doctored. I'm not saying this is for sure true, but it does look like these people are the same people that are in this original photograph. It looks like the same people. It's possible that they are still alive. And again, if the Challenger mission was some way used to regenerate public interest in the space program, you can see how the escape hatch underneath the tunnel, as displayed in this James Burke BBC documentary, could be used to get the astronauts out from under the spaceship prior to launch, when they knew it was going to explode, and these astronauts actually survived. So some speculation there, but I think it's a bit of a truth reveal. Another thing is that the puppet masters of this world reveal their truth through movies. This may be a bit redundant. I've talked about this a little bit before, but so this movie Capircorn 1 was made in 1977 about a fake mission to Mars. They show all these things, and it's presented to the public as a fictional entertainment. And, I would ask you to consider that this is actually the perpetrators revealing their methodologies in perpetrating the conspiracy, so that they have this release of karma. So they can say, well, we told you about it. You didn't do anything to oppose this, so therefore you have a passive acceptance of this conspiracy. That's my understanding. That's my opinion. Another truth drop, I think, kind of talked about this before, but the astronauts were opposed to participating in this conspiracy. They did not want to fake it. They did not want to lie to the public. I think you can see that through the behavior of the Apollo 11 astronauts. Certainly they don't seem very happy about this. There's an interview with Buzz Aldrin in which Bart Sibrel interviews him and shows him some footage of what Bart Sibrel thinks is a shot of the moon being faked from inside the launch module, being in orbit on Earth, but then faking it to make it look like they were halfway to the moon. And Buzz Aldrin gets very upset. He jumps up and says, "Hey, you need to talk to the director of NASA. We're just passengers on this thing. We're just passengers. We're not in charge of any of this." So that interview is part of the documentary A Funny Thing, Astronauts Gone Wild. So again, you can, and it goes the same in the movie Capircorn 1. The astronauts did not want to participate in the lie. They were encouraged, they were convinced to do so at the threat of violence to their families, and you can only assume that this is how these gentlemen here were forced to participate, if in fact that is what happened. Their families may have been threatened, and they said, if you don't do this, we're going to kill your family, and so they participated, possibly. Another thing I think is revealed in the movie is that a few people will figure out the conspiracy, and that the truth leaks out. So at the end of Capircorn 1, the astronaut who is the government tried to kill him, he escapes, and he goes to his own funeral. So they're showing here that, in fact, there's people that were at that funeral, his family. They see that he's actually alive. They understand that the government is lying. The vice president was there, and he sees him, and he starts to realize that he was lied to as well. I think this is, in a way, another truth drop, that there are people who do know what happened. They may be in NASA and others, and they're trying to tell you the truth. So those are all the main things that I could highlight as truth drops in the movie Capircorn 1. I think it's a very revealing movie. In my opinion, it is the conspirators showing their hand and explaining to you how the conspiracy was perpetrated, such that they may relieve from their karmic responsibility. And I'd encourage you to think about these things, do your own research, consider these things for yourself. Thanks for your time.